Hey guys, this is the second part of our procrastination episode. Uh, if you haven't seen the first part, I would go ahead and watch that. Otherwise, this may not make a whole lot of sense. So here you go. Okay, let's
Okay.
go back to time management
Okay. Yeah.
because I have some thoughts as to why Well, just start talking about time management.
Well,
Let's say what you were going to say.
okay. I think that growing up, I was often given bad advice about my procrastination. I would be told things like, don't be lazy. Or my favorite, don't procrastinate. Which is like saying, hey, I have a problem. And someone going, well, have you tried solving it? Thanks, teacher. Yeah, if I knew how to not procrastinate, I would not procrastinate. Anyway, that's just stupid. But the third one that I would get a lot is, oh, you need to manage your time better. But that isn't the problem. The problem is not that I didn't need an app or a paper to tell me that I ought to work on a project a little bit every day for a week instead of doing it with T minus 40 minutes to go before class started. I knew that. So the time management wasn't the problem, but some of the time management techniques can help. Like making a to-do list. A to-do list it's not this revelation of, oh my God, I ought to do this today and not at the last possible second. But what it does make me do is it does make me think about stuff. If I have a task and I say, okay, let's start writing it down in the form of a to-do list, it means that the multiverse of crappy, annoying things that could happen has to collapse down into an actual to-do list of, oh, maybe the first item for learning how to program is to Google how to program, or which program should I use? Maybe I can find some nice tutorial to start doing on Code Academy or whatever. Having to make a to-do list makes me think about it. It makes me observe the thing that I'm thinking about, and it helps me, as long as I do it correctly, collapse it down into this pretty concrete set of simple things to do. And if I'm faced with the choice of, should I pass this off to future me or present me, type which programming language to use into Google, that's not so bad. I can do that right now, especially if I reflect on the fact that future me isn't going to want to do it any more than present me does. So the time management stuff I think can help, but not that it's managing your time. It's that it's managing your emotions and helping you think about a task and dissipate the fog. I think that's the main appeal of that. What are your thoughts on time management?
Well, I agree. I mean, procrastination is a huge emotional issue.
Yes.
And there's a lot of things going on. But what time management does for me is it puts a sense of urgency on things. A few weeks ago, I think, I was having one of those days where I just could not get started. I was procrastinating a lot. And I was getting really depressed about it and frustrated.
Yeah.
It seems so stupid, like just get started, but it's not that easy.
It's not easy. I feel the same, but it's not.
And the time just seemed to be stretching on forever, and the day was just becoming horrible because I'm feeling like a failure or whatever.
Yeah.
So I decided I'm just going to set a timer for 10 minutes and do dishes because I'm useless. So I'll just do that. I set the timer for 10 minutes. I start doing dishes. All of a sudden, I'm in a completely different mood. I'm in the get things done mood. I'm in the I have this sense of urgency all of a sudden. And all of a sudden, I see time as this thing that's ticking away. And I need to get things done. I need to make decisions. I think that's the key thing is I have to make decisions. And I actually do want to work on the thing that I wanted to work on.
Yeah.
I don't want to waste my life not doing this, So after the 10 minutes, I get started right away. I mean, so that's what time management kind of does for me is it puts that sense of urgency on you.
Or it kind of changes your thinking about your time and where it's going, I guess.
Well,
I mean, yeah, that's the same feeling that I had. like I said, the problem for me is that I picture future me catching all of the wasted hours that present me is making. Like, I might be unproductive today, but future me is going to make up for all of that. And I do, if I do the same kinds of thing where I get started and I get a little bit of momentum going, sometimes there's this mental clarity that happens of, oh, present me needs to get stuff done, and there's this many hours left in the day, and there's stuff that I want to do, so I'm going to go do them, and this might take an hour, and so I'll focus on that, and this might take an hour, and it changes that relationship where it's no longer just superhero future me doing all these things that present me is just not caring about for some reason.
Right. Dr. Ferrari says you can't manage time, you can manage yourself.
I don't know if I exactly know what that means, but...
Well, stop worrying so much about getting the perfect amount of hours and whatever. But if you can get yourself mentally up to the task, I don't know. Yeah. For some reason, it meant something to me, and I ended up getting things done and not worrying too much about, you know, spending exactly an hour and a half on something or exactly 20 minutes doing a task. It was, you know, am I in the right mindset? Am I focused? Am I truly focused on the task?
Right.
So, okay. I kind of want to talk about motivation, unless you got something right now.
No, go ahead. Yeah.
Okay. People waiting for motivation to get started on a task. How do you feel about that?
Well,
I think people assume that they need to feel motivated in order to start something, right?
Yeah. I think of that a little bit similar to creativity, in the sense that if you're going to, I don't know, write a piece of music or come up with ideas for anything, whatever it is, sometimes you kind of picture yourself like you need to sit there and concentrate and hope that creativity happens, and you'll think, I'm just not creative right now, or maybe tomorrow I'll be creative. But that's not really how you get ideas. You get ideas by looking at things and kind of putting your head up and looking throughout the world and listening to music, and if you're trying to write a piece of music, and hearing things that you like, and you might hear something that you find interesting and you start looking for other things that sound similar or you find interesting, or it leads to other ideas in your head, and you start getting in this mode where lots of things start coming out and one thing leads to another. That's how I think creativity usually works, is you go out looking for it, and sometimes you don't quite find what you're looking for, but that's how you get there. And I think motivation is similar. You don't become motivated by sitting there and clenching your fists and hoping to become motivated. You become motivated by what we just said, thinking about a task and breaking it down and starting something. And sometimes you start something and you actually aren't really that into it. And I think that this is a bit of a side point, but one of the problems I have with procrastination and this idea that it can be hard to start a task is that sometimes I will start one and I don't enjoy it, or I'm just not focused. The motivation isn't happening, and I force myself to grind it out for an hour or two of me being miserable. And it's true that sometimes you do need to push a little bit to get the train moving, but other times it's just not the right time. You're not into it. I can't write a song right now. I just can't. But forcing yourself through it is not the way, because that adds to that feeling of it being difficult every time. If you know that every time you start a task, you're going to have to grind it out and force yourself through it, you oftentimes just don't want to start a task. But if you start it, you give yourself an honest window of working on it and doing some task, and the motivation doesn't come, it's okay, I think, to go, all right, maybe this just isn't the thing right now, and you go do something else. And I think it lowers that friction of you starting that task in the future. If you know that you can start it and you can stop if you honestly just aren't into it, that makes it a lot easier to just next time go, okay, I'll start it. And if I don't like it, I can stop there too.
Right.
So I guess my answer to your question is that motivation, it's not something that just hits you. You have to develop it. You have to put forth effort and try things and get going and put some thought out there. But there are times when you're just not motivated, and it is okay to switch to something else.
Well, I just feel like a lot of people, I mean myself included, you put off the task because you don't feel motivated, and you can end up
Right.
procrastinating forever because you assume that motivation should strike you, and then you will go do it. Like, you will want to go do the thing, when actually I think motivation is like a reactionary feeling. I mean, once you get going, and if things are going well, then you feel motivated. That's when the train has
Yeah.
developed the momentum and it starts carrying you. That's when you feel the motivation.
Yes, I 100% agree. I think motivation is something that you find and develop as you do something. It's not something that just hits you.
Right. So I think it's dangerous to assume that when you see other people doing something and they're really good at it, you just assume that they always love it, or it's so easy for them to get into it, when actually it may be difficult at the beginning, and
Right.
then they feel motivated.
Right.
That was my only thought on that.
Oh, I totally agree. I think that, yeah, I agree. That's all I'll say there.
All right.
Cool.
Oh, okay. Do you have anything else?
Well, I think really just one last thought on one of the, here's a pretty funny thing about procrastination that's frustrating. If you're a procrastinator, oftentimes you wind up doing things at the last minute in a panic, and it's an intense experience. And one of the problems with that is, if that's how you do every task that you need to do, then that's your emotional relationship with doing anything. Anything you do is this panicky, frantic, get it done desperately in the nick of time thing. And so in the future, any task that you're faced with, it has that feeling to you of it's always unpleasant, or at least super intense. But it doesn't need to be. It's only that way because you procrastinate it, but you procrastinate it because that's how you feel about it. I think it's a bit of a feedback loop. Like, procrastination makes tasks feel worse because you frequently do them in really crappy ways. Did that make sense? Did I say that right?
Yes, I like that, actually.
Okay.
I hadn't thought about that.
Yeah.
So what you're saying is, if you always procrastinate, then the only way you actually get things done is through a panic. And then you start associating getting things done as you in this panic state.
Yes.
So it only makes you procrastinate more.
Yeah, I think there's a bit of a feedback loop to it.
So what's the solution?
Don't procrastinate. Like I said, those teachers were right all along.
Well, I think that there's ways of... You're only beginning your work when you feel that sense of urgency, and you're only getting that towards the end of your deadline, or when the deadline becomes closer. And so you're waiting for that sense of urgency.
Right.
You're waiting for the decision of, do it now or don't do it. Right?
Yes.
You can no longer fantasize. And so you're waiting for that moment where you can't do that anymore. And then you start. I think there are little ways of spreading that out, you know?
Yeah.
So you kind of break it, you break the task down. I don't know. There are ways of simulating that in a smaller scale, simulating the panic, the sense of urgency across.
Here's an example that I was thinking about. We're talking about a deadline, right? Where it sucks when you have a deadline coming up and that's when you do something. But there are some things that you don't have a deadline for. And if you're a serious procrastinator, that means that you will literally never do them. It's a major problem. So exercise is one of them for a lot of people, I think. I know from lots of firsthand experience that some people want to lift weights. They want to go to the gym and lift, but there's a lot about that makes that a really uncomfortable idea. If you've never done it before, you're not exactly sure how to handle a barbell, that idea of doing it is just a very uncomfortable thing for many people, with reason. I mean, it's odd, it's foreign, you don't really know what's going to happen there, and so you picture yourself going to the gym wanting to lift, and there's again the multiverse thing of all these different anxieties that come up of maybe I won't be able to find parking, and what if I walk in and the person at the counter is not there and I have to stand around awkwardly and wait, and what if I go over and all the bench presses are full with a bunch of weird high school kids yelling at each other, and what if I get on there and I drop the weight on my face, or I try to do too much. And there's just they aren't always conscious thoughts, usually they're just swirling around in your mind, but there's this big ball of anxiety around going to the gym, even though it's something you want to do. And if you had a deadline where someone said, you go today or you will be banned permanently from ever lifting a weight in your life, and that is a choice you have made forever, then you might do it. But that won't happen. You just do it tomorrow, and future you will figure it out. And that's a rough thing to handle. But I think what you should do is you should say, my goal is to go to the gym and sign in at the front desk and then go to the bathroom and then leave. And that should be your first goal for that first day at the gym. And once you do that, all you have to do is deal with the anxiety around getting there and seeing a new place and meeting the person at the front desk and walking in and going to the bathroom and then leaving. And that's it. That's your goal. And you might think, well, that's stupid. I'm not exercising. I don't want to go there and waste time. But you aren't wasting time. You're dealing with a serious problem that you need to have respect for, which is your need to procrastinate. So you do that, and then you're comfortable with that. And you say, okay, next goal, go to the gym. I will look at the bench presses. If they're full, then I will get on an elliptical, pedal for 10 minutes and leave. Right? Like that part of the anxiety is, what do I do if the bench presses are full? Well, that's what you do. You make this decision ahead of time. You get on the elliptical, you peace out. If they're not, you go to a bench press, you grab an empty bar, you do one set of 5 repetitions with an empty bar, and then you leave. And that's it. You don't have this foggy idea in your head of, oh, I don't know what to do once I get there. How much weight should I put on? And there's a million questions of these random anxiety causing things. You have a very clear, distinct decision tree plan of what you're going to do, and then you do it. And yeah, of course, like, you're not going to get super ripped doing a single set of 5 presses with an empty bar, but you will deal with that anxiety where you'll do it and you'll realize that, oh, well, I did it and it wasn't really that big of a deal and I could definitely have done more. And then next time, you add a little bit more and you start tackling the real problem that you have, which is the anxiety around this thing, that way, where you come up with as simple, doable things as you possibly can, depending on how severe your procrastination, perfectionism, anxiety, whatever is, and you slowly push your way into that situation that way.
Well, yeah, it's kind of the same thing we were saying before, is when you look at the whole problem of going to the gym and working out for the first time ever, and you're trying to get ripped and you want to change your entire life. I mean, that's a huge, vague problem. And that's scary. Like, it's a huge monster. But if you start shedding some light on it and start breaking it down to the really simple things, I mean, is it really that scary to go park in the parking lot? No. Is it really that scary to walk in the front door? Maybe a little.
Yeah, but it's doable.
But it's not that bad. I could walk in and then walk out.
Yeah.
Can you talk to the person at the front desk and just ask a few questions? That's not that scary. What about just walking around the weights? Like, that's not that bad. And so if you break down every problem one at a time, it's not that bad.
Yeah.
Like, it's really not that bad. And if you give it a shot and try it, it might actually be kind of fun. And that might be why you wanted to do it in the first place anyway. I don't know. Yeah, that's a good example.
Yeah, I think if you're like us, you have this tendency to fantasize in this I have done this so many times, and it is so dumb, where at the new year, whatever, I think for this whole year, every single day, I'm going to do 200 push-ups every day. And it'll be really hard at first, and I'll get through it, which is just same with the gym. It's easy, I think, for many people to set this goal of, well, I'm this year I'm going to go to the gym and I'm going to work out for 2.5 hours every single day, and I'm going to get so in shape and it's going to be so amazing. And that's exactly the opposite of what you should do. You should go the complete opposite direction and think, my goal is to park in the parking lot at the gym. That's my goal. And if you complete your goal, which I know it sounds stupid, but if you complete it and you're left thinking, oh man, I really could have done more, that really wasn't hard at all, that's a good place to be. If you set a goal where you are bound to fail, like trying to do 200 push-ups every day for the whole year, that it's so stupid on so many levels, because as soon as you miss a day, which inevitably is going to happen, you should have known that from the very start, you immediately feel guilt of, oh, I failed, I didn't accomplish it. It's the exact opposite of that feeling of, oh, I did that and it wasn't bad. Right. That's, I think, your approach. You want to do
things that leave you wanting more.
Yes.
If you do things that you fail at, you don't want to do anymore.
Right.
So set your goals really low and achieve them, and then you'll want to set another goal and achieve that one, and make sure you can achieve them.
And not to reach over to the other side too much, but I imagine that there is a parallel reality of people who are not perfectionists and who are not obsessive, and they have the opposite things, where what they need to do is set bigger goals because they show up and they don't do enough and they need to be pushed. But that's someone else. If you have these, I think they do. I'm sure they do. They have to. But we live in our own reality of people like you and I who have these obsessive perfectionist procrastination problems. And I think that the approach you want to take is what we just said. Make it stupidly simple. Make yourself want to do more after you're done.
Yeah. Okay, here's another reason why I think people might
be a long podcast.
Maybe we split it into 2 parts. I don't know.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
I got a couple more at least.
Okay.
This is another reason why people might procrastinate. And I realize that it's actually why I probably procrastinate sometimes, is that if you're so focused on work and getting a lot of things done all the time, always, and that is all you do, you're like a workaholic and you don't really have any fun things to do. This is me.
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. The only time where you feel remotely relaxed or like you're having fun or having that vacation from your work is when you procrastinate. And so your procrastination becomes an award, but you can still excuse it because it's going to lead to work. Like you almost feel like you're still working. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think, wait, but why calls it the dark playground?
Does he?
Yeah.
Does he address that?
Where you're kind of working, but you're kind of procrastinating, and you wind up just all your time bleeds together. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah. And so if you don't have scheduled breaks in your work, or if you don't have a time to just have fun, then when you procrastinate, that is the only time that you get that.
That's a super good point. I wanted to bring that up too, in that. All right, sorry about that. I guess we crashed. I think we're back. So you were just saying how if you're the workaholic type and have that obsessive nature, that procrastination can almost be a break. That is something that rings extremely true with me. One thing I have noticed when I get into a project, and if I hit that obsession train type of thinking where suddenly it becomes the only thing I can think about, I'm up all night, it's just this thing that I'm super fixated on. To me, that obsession almost feels a bit like a drug, where my mind is running in overdrive. I'm going 110%. And inevitably it ends. I can't sleep for 3 hours a night indefinitely. Eventually my mind kind of comes down from that.
Right.
And it can leave me needing relief of it's like I have an obsession hangover where I can't focus that well. And I start procrastinating and getting into that dark playground type of thing a lot. And I think the only answer there is to moderate a bit. We talk about procrastination, how almost from one side of it, where you're procrastinating something, you're resisting getting into it. But once you get into it and the motivation train starts moving, and maybe even you get into that overdrive obsession kind of state, I think you actually want to moderate that a little bit as well. If I don't work for 14 hours a day and obsess over something, if I force myself to disengage, and I said this before, sometimes something physical like lifting can be a really good way to do that because it forces me to unplug my mind from something and get into something else. Doing that kind of moderation can make it so that I don't wind up with as much of a hangover, and I don't resist getting into something as much later on. Because right. I don't create these massive, monstrous, all-consuming tasks every time I start something.
Right. And I think, if you're doing a lot of working, your brain craves that rest.
Yes.
It needs it. And so it will force you to procrastinate as a positive thing.
Yes.
So procrastination is... it can be a good thing.
Well, I don't know if I agree, because the dark playground is kind of gross. To lean into
explain
wait but
the
why
dark
metaphor.
Playground again.
This is not my metaphor. This is wait but why. Tim Urban, I think his name is. He describes that state you get into where you have something you need to do, but you're resisting doing it. A lot like you said, when you're pushing the train a little and then stopping and doing something else and constantly getting distracted. It's as if you're half wasting time on stupid stuff, and then you're half kind of working but never really getting focused, and your time just kind of blurs into this murky, gross, continuous thing of kind of working, kind of not, never really doing either. Like you're relaxing but you're not actually that relaxed.
Right.
I get in that state sometimes, and it's not pleasant. And I think the better thing is if you have time of actually relaxing and doing whatever you find to be a leisure activity, and then having a time where you are focused. When you start to procrastinate almost uncontrollably, where you can't get into something, I think you're right. It is your brain resisting. Maybe you are overworked, but I don't think that's the ideal way to do it. I think if you needed to not go so hard in the past, or you need to just relax and really recover. We talked about this in social media, how a lot of the time when I'm wasting time on Reddit and doing stuff like that, it's not actually the thing that I want to do. If I were to say, I have 3 hours of time that I can do whatever I want with, then I might actually start playing around with my 3D printer, or go for a bike ride, or read a book, or do something that I actually want to do. Those time-wasty procrastinator activities, sometimes it's more of me avoiding doing something I want to do than doing a thing that I wanted to do for leisure. So I don't think that's a good place to be, at least for me, of involuntarily procrastinating.
Yeah, I think that's what I meant is, if you spend too much time working, your brain wants to rest. The good thing to do is to go and change gears into one of your other leisure activities.
Actually rest.
And get some actual rest,
right.
Unlike the purgatory of going to of half working and half being distracted.
Yeah, I agree.
So actually, changing gears, I think, is one reason why people may procrastinate as well. Say you're sitting around relaxing, or maybe you're in slight purgatory. I don't know, but you're kind of in a resting state, not really doing anything. your brain doesn't want to change gears
Mm-hmm.
into something else because it's comfortable. Um, it takes a lot of mental energy to switch into that other world of whatever
Yes.
you need to be doing.
There's a weird thing that happens to me, and I don't really even understand why, but it's weird. Many mornings I wake up, get my coffee, I start on work. I'm working at writing software, and often enough at the start of the day I have a hard time getting into it. I'm not really focused on it. And on certain days of the week I lift. I usually do it at around 1 o'clock in the afternoon. So I work for 4 hours, I take a break where I go lift and do that whole thing, and then I go back to it. So some of these days I'll be supposed to work on software, and all I can think about is lifting. I'm thinking about the program I've got. Maybe I'm wanting to read some article that came out. Whatever the case, that's what I'm thinking about. And I'm having a really hard time getting into work. The day will progress and it will get to where I need to start switching into, okay, put clothes on, either go to the gym, or lately it's been workout at home, get down in the basement, get going on stuff. And as I feel that need of, oh, I need to get into that, I start getting more and more focused on work, where it's hard for me to disengage from work. I start going, oh, I'm going to do this one more thing and I'll get this last thing figured out. And I really wanted to start this. And I wind up procrastinating the thing that I wanted to do in the morning. And I'm really focused on work and resisting switching to doing the lifting, even though that's what I was thinking about early in the day. There's some part of me that just doesn't want to switch to the point where it makes me suspiciously too interested in the thing that I'm currently doing and not wanting to do the next thing. Have you ever experienced that?
Okay, wait. First, I have to clarify what you just said. You can't work because you're too focused on lifting.
When I'm supposed to be working.
Right. And then as it becomes closer to the time where you're going to be lifting, you can't stop working.
Yes.
Okay. Does that happen with me? See, I was about to say basically the complete opposite of what that was. And that is that, I still enjoy music, but really I mostly do art. And the reason why I can't do both of them simultaneously is because it's so hard for me to switch gears. When I live in this art world, my brain feels very comfortable, and it's easy to remember art things and whatever. Switching to music, it's a whole different world, and I have to completely readjust, and it takes a lot of mental energy to switch. And
well,
so
I think that's what I mean, though. I'm working, and when the time to make the switch starts approaching, I begin resisting making that switch.
Okay, so yeah, you're trying to hold on to what's comfortable.
Yes, even though it was uncomfortable just a few hours ago.
Do you think it's because of the amount of time you've spent on it?
Maybe,
or you've become more involved in it?
It's suspiciously well timed, though. There will be days where I haven't lifted at all, or I don't need to lift, and I never really get that feeling of, oh, I need to switch, and I'm resisting it. I'll go past 1 o'clock where I normally would lift and still have that feeling of, not super engaged with work. But on the days when I'm going to lift at 1 o'clock, as I get close to that 1 o'clock sort of deadline, I start to feel that resistance where I get hyper focused on work and don't want to switch to lifting.
Okay, now I am completely on the same page.
Okay.
I think that happens to me as well. The exact same thing. You don't want to leave the task you're working on because you feel comfortable in it. And when you feel comfortable and safe in that world of whatever world you're working in, there is no reason to leave it. To your mind. Your mind has no reason to leave it, really, because you're safe and working on it. You feel comfortable. And so it always takes a significant amount of energy to change gears completely and go into a different thing, a different world of interest where there's totally different rules. Like lifting is completely different than software
Yeah.
engineering.
I wonder
Art
too.
is completely different from music. It's
Yeah.
really hard for me to switch from one to the other.
Yeah. I wonder too if it has to feel it has to do with that sense of urgency that you were talking about, where even something as simple as, oh, I need to stop, or I need to stop in 15 minutes and go do something else, which part of it I think is me resisting going to lift. Maybe I'm a little bit anxious of, I up the weight a bit, it's going to be hard, whatever.
Right.
So that's part of it. But also I'm going to leave this in 15 minutes and I didn't maybe quite get done what I wanted to.
Right.
Whatever the case is, suddenly the time starts to feel real. Whereas if you have the entire day, it just feels this big ocean of, oh, I didn't really get that much done in the past half hour, but it's fine. I'm still here for 6 hours. And
right. And then you start thinking, no, I really did mean to do a good job in this area. No,
yeah.
Yeah.
Right. It makes it more of a present moment. Okay. So
you got any more notes?
They crashed, so I'm bringing them back up.
Okay, I got one, and it's another reason why I procrastinate, and that is the not your fault procrastination. That is when I'm working really hard on something and I get taken away from it, and it's not my fault. Okay, say I have a Saturday and a Sunday planned out. I'm gonna work super hard on Saturday, and then I'm gonna work really hard on the next thing on Sunday. If on Saturday I'm working very hard and something comes up and I'm taken away from it, whatever the reason, it's not my fault. I was working hard. Honestly, I was doing great.
Yeah.
I'm taken away. I have nothing to do with it. And the rest of my Saturday is completely blown. On Sunday, I wake up a failure again. It's like I have to completely readjust. My whole plan has been ruined. Everything's shattered. I don't know what to do. It's like I would have to break down everything all over again. And it's too big of a problem and I can't do it. And so then I procrastinate and I maybe blow my whole Sunday, even if I have the whole day to myself to work on things.
Do you think is it a problem of restarting, that you just don't want to push the train again? Or is it more of this, I had this perfect idea of how this weekend would be and it's ruined and I just don't want it anymore?
It's probably both.
Yeah.
I mean, because everything gets ruined, I did have a perfect idea of me working really hard and getting all these things done. It's like, even if I achieve everything I wanted to achieve on Sunday, I still did not achieve everything I wanted to achieve on Saturday. And therefore, no matter what I do, I can't succeed at it because of my previous plan. It's all ruined. Why even try? I'll just put this off indefinitely.
Okay,
this has happened to me multiple times.
Yeah. Okay, let me ask you this. Maybe not now, but think back when smartphones were newer and much more exciting. You got your first iPhone, or the second iPhone you got. And it was this object that you thought was awesome and you really liked and you spent a lot of money. And then you dropped it and the screen cracked, or you got maybe even something really tiny, like you got a scratch on it. Or maybe as a kid you got a bike and you thought the bike was amazing and then you scuffed it or something. For me, in those moments, I felt this feeling of, oh, this is garbage now. I'm so crushed. This thing is just, it could be the tiniest little flaw. First car I got, whatever. And it's this awful feeling of just despair. Is that familiar to you at all?
Yeah.
Okay. Yes. So I wonder if that's a bit similar. Again, with the fantasy hyper optimistic ideation of something of, oh, I'm going to be super productive this weekend, I'm going to get all this stuff done, and then there's some little flaw that gets put there of, oh, I just had an hour stolen from me because a contractor had to come by, whatever. And then you have this feeling of, oh, forget it, I don't even want it anymore, it's all ruined.
Yeah, no, that's what happens.
Okay.
What do I do about it?
I don't know.
I really don't. I have such a hard time coming back from that because it feels like such a failure of me, you know. I don't know. That is the one procrastination cause that I cannot seem to come back from, and it's just when my plans are ruined, when my deadlines don't make sense. It's like all of this work that I put into making all of these things run smoothly, they just fall all apart, and it feels hopeless when that happens. Does that happen to you, or?
Yo, yes, absolutely. I'm
okay.
I just don't know how to answer because I'm not. I think I have dealt with that in many ways. I think that aspect of procrastination has to do with the second side of the problem. For me, it's not the difficulty of the task, it's the fantasy, wonderful future version, delusional optimism part of it. And I think part of that is these perfect fantasies that you have that don't necessarily correspond to reality. If you sat down and thought about it, you would think, if I wanted to spend 12 hours this weekend working on something and something happens, so now I can only spend 10, that's better than 0. You have X number of hours in that weekend, and yes, you had one cruelly stolen from you, but that doesn't change the fact that you still have 10 hours available, or 11, and you can still spend them that way. One of the things that I think has helped me a lot in the way I deal with that problem is the lifting, the physical activity, because it forces, in particular, the powerlifting, because the powerlifting is extremely measured. I have charts and numbers and very specific targets of, I'm going to try to do this weight this many times with this many minutes in between sets and blah blah blah, all the way down to the last little pound. And if I hit the target, then I know I hit the target and I did well. And if I miss the target, I couldn't finish that last rep, I'm not doing what I needed to do. It's easy for me to have that feeling of, oh, something happened, I couldn't go to the gym today, somebody came over and I had a plan and it's ruined, and it's easy for me to want to just drop all of it. But because it's so measured out, and because I have done it for a while, I recognize that if I miss a day, the effect is fairly minor. If I miss 2 months, the effect is pretty serious. And I have hard numbers to see that with. And I can see that if I miss a day of lifting, or I don't finish what I wanted myself to do, I can tell the next week what the effect is. And usually it's not very much, if it's just a single missed or interfered with workout. It's something about the powerlifting forces me into that long-term thinking in a way that I can see very clearly in front of me. And that has been helpful to me, is being kind of forced to do that.
Well, I'll make ambitious plans, year plans or 3-month plans.
Yeah.
And those are the things that crush me, because something will come up to where I can't do them. And say those 3-month plans are broken into each month, and then each week, and then each day. And I have chapters of books all sorted out. Right. And then something happens, and then all of a sudden, all of that planning is just trash. And so it makes me not want to go back to it, which...
So I think that you are a bad planner.
Okay.
Because, with my example of setting a goal for, I'm going to do 200 push-ups every day, which is a real thing that I did do one year for New Year's. I thought, I'm going to do 200 push-ups every day. The problem with that plan is it does not acknowledge the fact that sometimes stuff happens, and it's extremely likely, close to 100%, that there will be soon enough someday where I can't do that. I'm sick, I'm traveling, somebody came over, who knows? The dog had to go to the overnight vet, which has happened a few times. I can't do my push-ups that day. And if the whole plan hinges on nothing ever going wrong for an entire year, and it falls down completely as soon as that thing happens, which is almost guaranteed to happen, then that's a pretty stupid plan. And it fits into that guilt, crappy feeling thing that happens where if you had a goal or something you were trying to do and you didn't do it, you wind up just feeling bad about it. You know, the opposite of accomplishing something and feeling good. It guarantees that that's going to happen. And if you miss a day and then you're going to start the next day, you have to start with one, feeling guilty about missing it, and two, this feeling of, oh, I failed my goal. I'm now on track to not complete my goal. What's the point of finishing this out?
Right.
So I think the way to do it, so I can't remember if I've talked about this before, but with the powerlifting, the way you plan for powerlifting, or at least the way that I do it, is that you typically use roughly 1 month blocks of 4 weeks to 6 weeks ish. And at the end of each one of those cycles, you take a week off. It's part of the program, is that you need to give your body a little bit of longer term rest. And so you take some time off. And what I have found is that having that relief valve of having a week off, that absorbs so many of those moments of something getting interrupted. And what I typically do now is I'll do 1 to 2 cycles, and whenever life presents me with a deload week of, oh, there's this stuff happening, or somebody's coming over, or whatever, okay, this is my week off, and then I will go back to working next. And that always was the plan. I planned on having a week off. That was intentional. It's baked into the program. And so when it happens, it's still according to the plan.
I should work that more into my plans.
I think it's honestly pretty key. It's that, again, the fantasy thing of, I'm going to have this perfect future of accomplishing everything, and as soon as it goes wrong, it shatters your dream, and now you're crushed and you write the whole thing off. I think you have to plan on that happening, because it will, almost guaranteed.
I think I have a lot of denial about how much time I have.
Yes.
Because it how much time I have, or how much free time I have now with a full-time job, is completely different than what I used to have with like a part-time job.
And
so
you drive to work at least sometimes, and you have a wife and dogs and everything.
Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think my plans may be too ambitious, and they only set me up to fail at them.
Yeah, I think you're picturing future Daniel as somehow being able to use every second of a day in the absolute best case scenario, even though that's not realistic.
Right. I will try to factor in more.
I swear it's that weird optimism thing.
Yeah. I have too much optimism. I should be more
negative. You are too optimistic. I'm serious. That's
it's
really
true.
fundamental, I think.
All right, I'm trying to find. Do you have anything else on your list?
I don't know. My list is gigantic.
Oh, I got one. This is probably my last thing.
Okay.
But one of the reasons why I procrastinate, I believe now, after just hearing it for the first time in my life, is because of social esteem protection, is what this type of procrastination is called.
Yeah.
Yeah, you heard it in the podcast.
Yes, I did. And I wanted to bring it up too. I'm glad you mentioned it.
I hate it because I think it's completely true.
Mm-hmm.
And I've always liked to believe that I'm like this unique human and I'm different than everyone. But
this is one that I don't want to admit to, because it's kind of a gross thing to have to say about yourself, but If it's true, it's true. I I felt this a lot, in particular in high school, where my reputation was not good, so I don't know why. I don't know. I was very concerned with my reputation, even though it kind of sucked. But I had this idea that I was really good at stuff, and if I procrastinated to the last second, let's say I had some report due, and I could write an amazing report if I wanted to, but I procrastinated to the last second, so I had to do it in an hour. So it wasn't that good, but that's fine. I still could have done an amazing report. I just did it the last hour, so it was super rushed. So that still means that I'm awesome at writing reports. I just couldn't do an amazing job because I had to shove it into an hour.
Right. It's you even subconsciously. For me, it usually is. I'm subconsciously procrastinating because I can then blame the failure of the task on lack of time instead of lack of ability. If the task is not complete because I procrastinated and because there wasn't enough time, so to speak,
right?
I can say, "Oh, I didn't have enough time," and then I can still say that, "Oh, I would have done a great job, if I had enough time."
Yeah,
you
or
know?
even it doesn't even have to be a failed job; just the mediocrity of it.
Yeah. Yeah. Whereas if I had worked on it every second that I could,
right,
and it didn't turn out well,
yeah,
that
you
would
have
be
to,
on me.
Yes, you have to own that. That was your best.
Yeah.
Yes, that's a very key piece of the procrastinating. I think, again, like we said, there's many different reasons, and I don't feel this one as much anymore as I used to. I know it was a major factor in high school, but there is this feeling of almost being afraid of ever doing your best, because then that's your best. You have to own that, versus shoving it to the last possible minute and rushing it, and then you have this wonderful way of separating yourself and going, oh well, it's not great, but I did it in an hour. Right. I'm still awesome. Yeah.
So that's self-esteem protection. Yeah.
It almost, the procrastination almost, it's like it gives you a relief from that too. I think it can be very uncomfortable to work really hard, and the perfectionism can spiral out of control, and that identity part of it where I don't know that we talked about this too much, but oftentimes you will procrastinate things because they are important. They're difficult, they're foggy, they're uncomfortable, but also they're important. There's some outcome from this action that is causing it to, it's almost like an amplifier. It makes it even worse because of the unpredictability of it.
Right.
In that case, you're doing some assignment for school, test, paper, whatever. If there is a piece of your reputation involved with that, it makes it maybe vague and foggy, but also it matters. There's an outcome and you don't know what it'll be, and that makes it even more uncomfortable. And the procrastinating it to the last possible minute, doing it against the deadline, it removes all of that. Where, well, I just had to get it done. So, yeah, sure, it's not perfect.
The other thing I was going to say, and this is kind of this is the end.
Okay.
At the end of the day, it doesn't matter how much you want something at all. You can fantasize about it all you want. But unless you're getting the work done, nothing matters. Nothing matters at all. And that is your reason for not procrastinating.
Yes, I would even say that if you're fantasizing about something, that's likely the problem.
That's likely very bad.
Yeah, because it feeds into that delusionally optimistic future fantasy perfect version of you thing. And that's the enemy of doing something now versus doing it later.
Yeah, it's this idea of this perfect future, and then you look at reality and it's so different.
Yeah.
And there's, yeah.
It feeds into perfectionism. So yes, I think fantasizing about things is exactly the opposite of what you should do. You should spend your mental energy trying to turn a task into something stupidly simple, or at least made up of stupidly simple pieces. I mean, some things are still big and complicated, but here's a quick example on that. One of my recommended solutions is to count things, which sounds silly, but I think it's very effective. So I needed to do the dishes the other night, and the kitchen had kind of gotten to a state of being pretty rough. And I don't like cleaning the kitchen, but I needed to do it. And I was procrastinating, and I was trying to observe why I was procrastinating. So I'm thinking about, okay, what is it about me going in there and doing the dishes, cleaning the kitchen, that I don't like? And I thought about it and figured, well, there's basically, I think, 4 parts to it. I'm going to throw away any trash and loose food items or whatever on the counter, random napkins and things. That part's pretty easy. Then I'm going to put stuff in the dishwasher, like plates and bowls and silverware. And actually, that part's pretty easy too. It goes quick. You just grab a plate, stick it in the thing. So that's not so bad. But then I will need to wash the pots and pans. And that was the one I could tell that I didn't like. Just mentally counting through the steps of cleaning the kitchen, that's the one that felt a little bit gross to me. And then I thought, well, why does that one feel weird? And it's because how many pots and pans do I have to do? And are there cutting boards? And sometimes they're full of gross stuff. That's the messy part, the big unknown. I don't know how much work I'm gonna have to do there. And then I figured, well, okay, I'll walk in the kitchen and I'll see how many I have to do. And I counted them, and there were 4. I had a cutting board, a pot, another pot, and a knife that needed to be washed. It's like, okay, well, there's 4 things that I have to wash. And that's not that bad if I just think through 4. I can picture myself doing the first one and then the second one, and then I'm 4 and I'm done. And that mostly, in step 4, after doing the pots and pans, was wiping down the counter, which again is really easy. So just trying to count up how many tasks I had to do, and then for the gross one, how many subtasks or how many pots I had to do. Just the act of counting them out made it feel so much more simple and concrete, where I'm not picturing this mountain of dishes and oh my God, here's another one, and this one, something's baked on it. All I had to do was walk in there and just observe and think that, okay, there's this many. I'm gonna have to wash 4 pots, or 2 pots and a cutting board and a knife. And that really isn't that bad. So I find that very helpful for me.
Counting things.
Yes,
I've never thought about that.
To me, it's similar to making a to-do list. It forces you to think about it and actually make it concrete of what am I going to actually have to do.
It takes away the vagueness and the fog.
Yes, It helps dissipate the fog. That's really the key thing.
Yeah. So, how do you summarize all this? What do you do if you're a procrastinator? What do you do?
Okay.
I guess we just talked about it all.
We did. Okay, let's see if we can turn that into something reasonably simple and concrete.
Number 1, and I don't even know if we talked about this, but make sure your environment supports you doing good work.
Yeah, that's a whole nother thing. I wanted to talk about this is the problem with writing 8 pages of key things to make sure you talk about. There's nothing's key thing anymore if you have 8 pages of it. I wanted to talk about the Marie Kondo's sparks joy thing, and how you want the thing that you need to work on, sitting down at your desk to write or work on music. It should be wonderful, and it should spark joy, and it should feel really good when you do it. And the things that are habitually distracting, like getting on social media, you should make those not spark joy if you can. Make it annoying to get into. You have to put in a password every time. Try to put friction there in the way of those things. But more importantly, whatever you want to work on, you should create this wonderful environment that you like.
Yeah, that supports you doing the thing that you actually really want to do.
Yeah.
And yeah, getting rid of distractions and things you don't like.
Yeah.
I like your Marie Kondo's way of saying it.
Yeah. Make it, I mean, but again, Stephen made a garden. You can procrastinate with anything. I mean, I can spend time with this sudden sense of urgency tracking the price history of cotton balls on Camel because I don't know, for some reason I need to. That's a site that let it. There's a site called Camel that lets you track price history of Amazon products. I imagine the reason they call it that is because it shows you a graph and maybe there's like different, I don't know.
Who cares?
The point is that it's stupid and pointless.
Okay.
But it will suddenly become the most fascinating thing in the world if I have some important thing that I need to do that I'm procrastinating on. So social media is not the only problem there. You can procrastinate with anything. So I think the main point there is make the thing you want to do feel really good, if at all possible.
Agreed. And take away vagueness.
Yeah, okay, yeah. Make the thing nice, get rid of the fog, take away vagueness.
If things seem really scary, just know that they probably aren't. So is there a way that you can break them down and make them very clear?
Set the opposite of fantasy goals. Don't go to the gym for 2.5 hours and work your ass off for the first time ever. Go to the gym, park, and then leave. That should be your goal.
Yeah. Stop thinking about what you're going to be in the future and start thinking about what you're going to get done today, what you've gotten done so far.
Yes, here's the big secret. You are future you. It's you. There is no future you. Yeah. What you do today is what you do. I mean, there is no better version of you coming unless you make it, but that's up to present you.
Also, the longer you put off working on the thing, the worse it gets.
The guilt snowball.
Yeah, the guilt snowball.
Yeah.
So just wake up, if you can, wake up in the morning, go straight to that thing and start working on it.
Yeah. I think you can work on it for 5 minutes. If that's the level you're at where you are really resisting doing something, then make that your goal. I'm going to wake up, I'm going to do it for 5 minutes and then stop. See if you can do that. Make the starting part of it easier.
All right. I think if we talk anymore, we're just going to, I don't know, start falling asleep or something.
Yeah, I know this is...
we've been talking for a while, but...
Procrastination's a big one, a huge one.
And we could keep talking about it.
I know.
It never really ends.
I know.
And there is no perfect way to sum it up, at least I don't know how.
I think that something on the level of procrastination, that it's almost silly to try and sum it up or act like there are simple solutions to it. At least for me, it's a problem that I have dealt with my whole life, and I've made serious improvements on it, and it's gotten better, but it's still a problem. And I think it will be a problem forever. I almost think of it like alcoholics, right? If someone's an alcoholic and they're in recovery, they never say, oh, I used to be an alcoholic, but I'm not anymore. They always specifically say, I'm a recovering alcoholic. It's not a recovered alcoholic. It's not I used to be. It's I'm a recovering alcoholic, as it is an active process that they are still doing, and they're never going to stop doing it. They're a recovering alcoholic forever, because that's a problem that they just have to deal with for the rest of their life. And I think that is my relationship with procrastination. I am a recovering procrastinator, I guess.
Yeah, me too.
You know, treating it like a simple problem is foolish. So.
Yeah, I completely agree. All right. Just to sum things up, procrastination's bad. Don't do it.
Simple as that.
We've been reading everybody's comments, and we really love them. We think they're wonderful.
Yeah.
Keep commenting. Keep asking questions. We want to do a video where we address all the questions that you've been asking us. I think that could be a lot of fun.
And even just read some of the fantastic things that people have posted. It's not even a question to us necessarily. Sometimes it's just a really good observation.
Yeah, and we really appreciate it. If you're listening on, I think, Apple Podcasts, leave a review, give us however many stars you think we deserve. And I think that's it.
Yeah. Thanks for listening.
All right. See you next week.
I never did the evil slot machine metaphor.
What's the evil slot machine metaphor? Wait. Are you recording?
Yeah.
Okay. Say that again. You never did.
I never did the evil slot machine metaphor.
What's the evil slot machine metaphor?
I thought it was a good way to think about certain tasks and how they're very gross and weird and uncomfortable. So we talked about social media and how it's a bit like a slot machine, right? Where you do this wonderful, comfortable action of pulling the lever, and then you get this random reward to it. To me, doing something that I don't like is a bit... I tried to picture like what's the opposite of that. So imagine a slot machine where instead of pulling a lever, you had to run a mile in flip-flops with a backpack full of textbooks or something. Just this really annoying, uncomfortable thing. And that was how you activated the slot machine. And then this slot machine would... The way it worked was it didn't have dials. You had to reach your hand inside of it and like put your palm up. Yeah, and you can't see inside of there. And it might... This was fun to think about. It might put something in your...
Did you come up with this?
Yeah.
Okay, continue.
It might put like a piece of paper in your hand. You pull it out and it's a $10 bill. And you're like, yes, I got something good. But it also might put something cold and wet in your hand and you pull it out and it's like a dead squid. Or it might prick your finger with a needle and there's like a little bit of blood. Yeah, it's horrifying, right?
What the hell does this have to do with procrastination?
That, the evil slot machine, is my idea of a thing that I don't want to do, especially if it's important. Say I'm gonna, I don't know, I have to give a speech at somebody's wedding. It's hard. I have to do something annoying to get there. And then the outcome, I don't know what it will. Everyone might love it. And that's like a good reward of me pulling out a $10 bill, or I might get laughed at, or I might forget what I was going to say and stand there awkwardly stammering, not knowing how to do it. Like there's, in my mind, doing this thing is like reaching inside that evil slot machine. I don't know the outcome. Some of them are good, some of them are bad, but I can't see them, and it's gross and awful and this nightmare thing. That's the way I feel about doing something. It's the opposite of what you get addicted to. That's why I procrastinate all the time, because you don't pull the lever and get something nice every time. Doing something, it feels like the evil version of that.
All right.
That's my evil slot machine metaphor.
God, I'm gonna have a nightmare about that.
Yeah.
That's terrifying.
Well, that's how I feel about doing anything. I think it makes it
fair enough.
Real.
Yeah,
I
that
don't
makes
know.
sense.
I spent the whole week thinking about procrastination, and that's one of the things I came up with.
All right, fair enough.